My proc accused me of corporate espionage, and my bosses let security drag me out. Years later, her confession exposed a truth they never saw coming. People always said Clara and I were more like siblings than cousins, and they weren't wrong. My name's Nathan. I'm 22, from a small rural town in western Illinois. I grew up in a weather-beaten farmhouse with chicken wire fences and a tool-stuffed shed out back. That shed was where I spent most of my time, especially after Clara moved in. Clara came to live with us when she was 7. Her parents died in a car wreck, black ice, and a logging truck. My aunt and uncle had never had much, and neither did we, but my folks took her in without a second thought. Back then, she was quiet and skinny, always watching everything around her like the world might disappear again. I remember handing her a screwdriver on her first day, asking if she wanted to help me fix the gear shaft on my bike. She nodded and never really left my side after that. I wasn't the school type. I'd rather be wrist-deep in engines or soldering parts in the shed. My teachers said I was mechanically gifted, but lacked discipline. I guess that was their way of saying I wouldn't make it. I didn't care. I built drones out of junkyard scraps, restored a '93 dirt bike with no manual, even welded together a wind-powered water pump from discarded lawn mower parts. Clara, though, she was sharp in every way. Top grades, always reading something dense and complicated. But even with all that book smarts, she never looked down on me. In fact, she looked up to me, followed me around like a shadow. By the time she was 10, she could strip a carburetor faster than most grown men. I taught her to code basic drone paths, solder circuit boards, and even debug old motherboards from scrapped PCs. We were a team, me the builder, her the brain. Our guardians, my aunt and uncle, praised Clara like she was the second coming. Every school report, every science fair ribbon, they framed like gold. Me? I was the messy one, the underachiever with dirty hands and calloused fingers. Nobody really paid attention unless I blew a fuse in the garage or forgot to mow the lawn. That stung sometimes, but Clara always had my back. We covered for each other all the time. When she stayed up all night working on a prototype for her robotics club and missed curfew, I took the blame. When I crashed a homemade drone through the church window, she said it was hers. We had each other's backs. Always. Until that night. I still don't know what set her off exactly. We were in the shed, arguing over one of her robotics entries. She wanted to use a code snippet I'd written without credit. I told her no, it was mine. Her face shifted, sharp and cold. She said something I'll never forget. You think they'd ever believe you over me? The air went still. She walked out, and I stood there holding a burnt microcontroller, suddenly unsure who she really was. Looking back, that was the moment. The line we crossed and never came back from. The last time Clara was just my cousin, my best friend, my little shadow. Before everything turned to ash. I landed the job at Magnus Robotics a week after my 22nd birthday. It felt like the kind of break people like me didn't get. I didn't have a degree, just a thick portfolio of working prototypes and a reputation in some tight online hardware circles. They brought me in as a junior field engineer, gave me a badge, a desk, and more access to high-end tech than I'd ever dreamed of. Clara was 18 and fresh out of high school. I vouched for her to get a summer internship at Magnus. No one questioned it. Everyone already liked her. Bright, fast learner, polished in a way I wasn't. Where I fumbled with words, she charmed executives over lunch. She still called me Nate in that old, familiar way, but it felt like she was slipping into another world while I tried to hang on. At work, I kept an eye on her, especially around guys like Billy Mays, a senior developer with a habit of leaning in too close and using his position to impress interns. He was smooth, in a corporate way, all teeth and compliments. One afternoon, I caught him cornering Clara in the break room, hand brushing her arm just a little too long. She was smiling, but her shoulders were stiff. I pulled him aside after, told him to cut it out, plain and simple. Just watching out for my cousin, I said. Billy didn't take it well. He made a snide comment about jealousy and walked off, but his expression said more than his words. The next few days, I noticed people at work watching me a little differently. Softer voices when I walked into rooms. Clara stopped stopping by my desk. Then came the Thursday I'll never forget. I was mid-prototype testing in the lab when security showed up. 2 men in suits, one holding a company-issued clipboard, the other with a badge clipped to his belt. Nathan Rich. I nodded. They told me to gather my things. I thought it was a mistake at first, some HR mix-up, but they escorted me out like I was a criminal, took my badge, locked me out of the company server. I asked what the hell was going on. You've been accused of stealing internal files, one of them said. That stopped me cold. And he added, of threatening a colleague to stay quiet. I knew, right then, it was Clara. They showed me screenshots of my own drone log exports, things I built off the clock, at home, but stored in an encrypted cloud folder. They had my tools too, my soldering kit, my backup drive. Clara must have given them access. They called it company IP, claimed I had reverse engineered a Magnus prototype and tried to sell it. I was stunned silent, not just at the accusation, but that no one, not my supervisor, not my manager, gave me the benefit of the doubt. Overnight, I went from rising star to disgrace thief. I stood in the parking lot, the heat beating off the asphalt, watching Clara laugh through the window of the executive floor like none of it touched her. Later I found out she'd told HR I'd grown possessive, that I lashed out when she tried to move on. They believed her. And just like that, my whole life collapsed. The hands that taught her to solder were now the hands they said stole from them. And Clara? She walked right back in the building like I never existed. The company didn't just fire me, they blacklisted me. In tech, word spreads fast. One black mark from a firm like Magnus, and every recruiter suddenly forgets your name. I must have sent out 50 resumes. Only one person called back, and even they hung up the second I mentioned Magnus Robotics. It didn't take long for my guardians to find out. I tried explaining, told them it was all a setup, that I'd never steal anything, but they didn't want to hear it. Clara had already gotten to them. She said you scared her, my aunt said, voice trembling. You were like a brother to her, and you just expect us to ignore what she's saying, my uncle added, crossing his arms like I was some stranger on their porch. That was the last conversation we had. I packed what I could into my old van, a rust-eaten Dodge Ram with more tape than paint, parked it behind an abandoned drive-thru on the edge of town and started living out of it. I drive into the city to use the library's Wi-Fi, took online repair gigs from shady forums and barter boards, fixed up drones and dash cams and parking lots for cash. It wasn't enough, but it kept me from going hungry. Clara, meanwhile, was everywhere. Wired magazine, TEDx talk, some polished PR piece titled The Girl Who Survived Corporate Predation. In every photo, she wore this brave little smile like she'd just clawed her way out of hell. She told them I was unstable, dangerous, that I pressured her to cover up the breach I caused, that I manipulated her with guilt. The kind of things no one questions when they come from a smart, well-spoken girl who looks like she could be your daughter. I watched it all happen on public computers and borrowed phones. The interviews, the speaking engagements. People showered her with praise, donations, and startup offers. And me? I sat on cold pavement soldering wires with the tip of a lighter because I couldn't afford a new iron. I tried to rebuild, took free MIT courses online, applied to 1,000 freelance listings, tinkered in parking lots and alleyways with salvage parts, trying to keep my brain from rotting out. I still had my notebooks, the original logs, the drone sketches, the hand-drawn circuit maps Clara used to copy. I stared at them every night, wondering how she'd turned my work into a crime scene. The betrayal didn't even hurt the most. It was the silence that followed. Nobody called. Nobody asked what really happened. It was easier to believe the shiny, tragic version Clara offered. In time, I learned to stop explaining myself. People see what they want to see, and they saw a loser with a van full of junk, a ghost of a guy who used to matter. And Clara? She rose from the ashes I never set. It had been almost 3 years since I'd spoken to anyone in my family when I got the email. No subject line, no greeting, just a phone number and the words, "Need to talk. Urgent. M. Morris." For a second, I thought it was spam, but the name caught me. I remembered it from somewhere. Took me a minute to place it. Morris was a private investigator. I'd seen his card once in the Magnus building, back when I was still someone they invited to meetings. I almost deleted it. Instead, I called. He picked up after one ring. His voice was gravel, like someone who'd smoked through too many stakeouts. "Nathan Rich." "Who's asking?" "Name's Morris. I was hired by a man named Billy Robards, your cousin Clara's husband." I sat forward on the mattress in the back of my van. "Okay." He asked me to look into Clara's past. Said she was slippery, secretive. "You got 5 minutes to meet." I didn't answer right away. "I've got something I think you'll want to see," Morris said. "Might change everything." That's how we ended up in a booth at a greasy spoon off I-80, across from a gas station that smelled like burnt oil. Morris wore a corduroy jacket older than both of us and dropped a thick folder onto the table between our coffee mugs. "Your cousin's been busy," he said. "Lying, mostly." I opened it. Inside were emails, screenshots, old company logs, a thumb drive. He laid them out like puzzle pieces. One page was a screenshot of Clara messaging someone named Gwen. "Clara, 3:13 a.m. He found out about the breach. If I don't flip it, they'll come for both of us. I'll make it look like he took the data and threatened me. Don't worry, I can make it stick." Next were timestamp discrepancies, access logs to the Magnus servers that showed Clara's login credentials downloading proprietary schematics a full day before she ever told HR I had forced her to stay quiet. Another was a doctored code sample. My code, edited just enough to look like hers, submitted to the company archive under her name. "She had help," Morris said. "Your old buddy Billy Mays. They were sleeping together. He helped her pin it on you and covered her tracks until he got canned for harassment 6 months later." I kept flipping. Clara's digital trail wasn't just sloppy. It was arrogant. She never thought anyone would look this deep. She covered up a data leak caused by her lover, Morris said, then framed the one guy she knew wouldn't fight back. "Why would her husband look into her?" I asked. Morris sipped his coffee, said she started drinking too much, hiding her phone, arguing over nothing. He got curious, then suspicious. I stared at the printouts, the texts, the logs, the tiny, glaring holes in her story. "You're not crazy," Morris said, gently now. "She buried you to save herself." I didn't speak for a long time, just sat there with the proof in my hands, like I was holding a loaded weapon. For the first time in years, I felt something unfamiliar, leverage, and the fire to use it. I walked into Whitmore and Levy Law on a Tuesday morning, carrying a beat-up backpack stuffed with printouts, screenshots, and a flash drive. The receptionist gave me a once-over, probably clocked the frayed cuffs on my sleeves, the van keys clipped to my belt loop, and asked if I had an appointment. "I've got proof of a felony," I said, voice steady, "and I need someone who's not afraid to ruin a golden girl." That got her attention. 2 weeks later, we filed a petition to reopen my case. Clara's texts, Morris's investigation, and a signed message from her to Billy Mays outlining the cover-up. Every scrap of it went into the filing. My lawyer, Jenna Malik, was ruthless and calm, the kind of person who could turn a whisper into a gunshot in court. Clara didn't just lie, Jenna said during our first real sit-down. She manufactured a version of events to protect herself from the consequences of a breach she caused. We're going to tear it all down. The court didn't take long to schedule a hearing. The story had heat. The same outlets that ran Clara's Survivor piece were now scrubbing old posts and issuing soft retractions. One blogger even called it the biggest corporate gaslighting since Theranos. Clara's face disappeared from tech panels. Her startup's website went dark. Investors pulled out overnight. No one likes being sold a lie with a bow on it. I watched it all unfold from the same van I'd been sleeping in for 3 years. Except now I had hope for the first time in a long time. The judge was sharp and to the point during the hearing. The original charges were based on testimony and digital evidence we now know to be altered or selectively presented, she said, flipping through the new documentation. Given this new material, including first-hand confessions and falsified code logs, this court finds reason to vacate all previous claims against Nathan Rich. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just stood there, hands clenched behind my back, heart hammering like a motor at redline. It was over. The next morning, the firm released a statement. Nathan Ridge has been cleared of all wrongdoing and will pursue civil damages against the individuals and institutions responsible for the false accusations. Civil damages. I didn't care about the money. I just wanted the world to know I wasn't a thief, that I'd built everything with my hands, not taken it. My guardian sent an email that night. We're so sorry. We didn't know. Please call us. We'll explain everything. I didn't reply. Clara hadn't spoken a word. Not to the court, not to the press. But I'd seen her face when the judge read the ruling. Shock, not guilt, not even regret. Just disbelief that someone like me had clawed his way back. I was cleared, publicly, legally, completely. But it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like a grave with the wrong name on the headstone had finally been corrected. The letter from my guardians came a week after the verdict. Handwritten, neatly folded. No return address. Inside was a long apology, full of flowery phrases and watery regrets. They wrote about how proud they were that I had found the courage to clear my name, how shocked they were to learn what Clara had done. They ended it with an invitation to meet, said they wanted to talk, said they missed me. There was also a check enclosed, $10,000. A token of apology, the note read. We hope it helps you get back on your feet. I laughed when I saw it, folded it in half and stuck it in my jacket pocket. Not because I was going to cash it, but because I needed to look them in the eye when I gave it back. We met at a diner on the edge of town, the kind with vinyl booths and syrup-sticky menus. They were already seated when I walked in, my uncle looking smaller than I remembered, my aunt fidgeting with a napkin like it was evidence. Nathan, she said when I approached. Her eyes were already glassy. You look different. I nodded and slid into the booth across from them. No hug, no handshake. There was a long pause before my uncle spoke. We're sorry. Truly, we believed her because she was always so good with words. And I wasn't? I asked. They both flinched. She played us, my aunt whispered. We see that now. We feel awful. I pulled the check from my pocket and set it on the table between us. I'm not here for your money. We just thought it might help, my uncle said weakly. You've had a hard time. No, I said. I had a hard time because you chose the easy way out. Clara told a lie, and you grabbed onto it like a life raft. My aunt reached for my hand, but I pulled it back. You want to apologize? I continued. Then sit here and listen. I opened Morris's folder, laid out the worst of it, Clara's texts, the code she doctored, the night she messaged Gwen about framing me. I read it all aloud, word by word. They didn't interrupt. By the time I closed the folder, my uncle's face was pale, and my aunt had given up trying to hide her tears. I defended her, he said quietly. I told people you were unstable. You stopped being my family the moment you chose convenience over truth, I said. My aunt sobbed openly now. We didn't know. You didn't want to know, I snapped. They tried to protest, but I stood up, sliding the check back across the table. Keep it, or give it to Clara. Maybe she'll need it where she's going. My uncle looked up at me, eyes rimmed red. Nathan, please. You made your choice, I said. Now you get to live with it. I walked out of the diner and didn't look back. Let the door swing shut behind me like a gavel. For 3 years I'd been begging for someone to believe me. And now that they did, it was far too late. By the end of the month, Clara's name vanished from every tech site that once praised her. Her startup dissolved quietly, website redirected to a 404 not found. The investors, some of whom had written her 6-figure checks based on her survivor of corporate abuse story, walked away in silence. One filed a fraud suit. Another demanded a full audit. And Clara? She disappeared from the internet like a ghost. No more TEDx videos, no thought leader threads on LinkedIn. Her Instagram went private, then dark. A week later, even her profile picture was gone. Morris, ever the bloodhound, kept me updated whether I wanted it or not. She's not just hiding, he told me over the phone. She's unraveling. Apparently, her drinking had worsened. Billy Mays, her former lover, co-conspirator, whatever he was, had been contacted by one of the civil attorneys probing the data breach. He flipped in under a day, handing over everything to save himself. Morris also found something darker buried in her past. Back when she was in college, she'd made similar accusations 3 different times. Each case followed the same pattern. a mistake, a looming threat of exposure, then a targeted lie aimed at someone close. They always believed her, Morris said grimly, because she was scared, because she cried. But it was always about dodging accountability. Her husband, Billy Robards, filed for divorce shortly after the court vacated my case. He moved out the same week, filed for full custody of their 2-year-old daughter, and submitted Morris's report to family court. She lied under oath, his petition read. She endangered someone else's life and reputation to protect a secret affair and cover up corporate theft. She is not stable. I didn't know if the court would give him custody. I didn't care. That child didn't choose any of this. But she deserved better than a mother built out of performance and panic. Then, one afternoon, an envelope appeared in my P.O. box. No return address. No name. Inside was a single page of printer paper. No greeting. No excuses. Just 5 words. I'm sorry. I ruined everything. Clara. No explanations. No begging. No spin. It wasn't enough. And it was far too late. I held the letter for a long time in the front seat of my van. Thought maybe I'd scream. Thought maybe I'd feel vindicated. Instead, I folded it once, slowly, and put it in the glove compartment with the rest of the papers from Morris's investigation. I didn't reply. Didn't want to. Didn't need to. She had said the truth out loud, for once in her life, and that would be the last thing she'd ever get from me. I moved to Davenport, Iowa, 3 months after the court decision. Didn't tell anyone. Didn't leave a note. Just packed what little I had into the back of the van and drove east until the roads started to feel unfamiliar again. I rented a tiny workshop in a strip behind a paint store, just enough space for a lift, a soldering bench, and a row of pegboard hooks I drilled into the drywall myself. I named it Ridge Systems. Quiet, plain, no frills. A repair and custom drone design shop, mostly catering to local farmers who wanted aerial imaging of their fields. Nothing flashy, just work I could lose myself in, the way I used to in that old shed behind the farmhouse. I lived in a 1-bedroom above the workshop. It smelled like sawdust and solder smoke and oil. I liked it. There were still bad days. Some nights I'd lie awake hearing the echo of Clara's voice. They'd never believe you over me. Sometimes I'd catch a glimpse of myself in the mirror and think, they really didn't. But I never let those thoughts linger. They'd already stolen enough time. One afternoon, a woman from the local tech college stopped by. Her name was Joy, and she wore a bright scarf over a plain black sweater. And she talked like someone who smiled even when no one was looking. I heard about you, she said. My brother had you fix his crop drone. I nodded. You're the real deal, she said. Would you consider mentoring some of our students? We're starting a new engineering and robotics program. I hesitated. That old, stinging instinct kicked in. You're not qualified. You're the guy who got thrown out of Magnus. But I looked around the shop, at the drones on the rack, the circuit boards in tidy rows, the solder joints that gleamed clean and perfect. I'll think about it, I said. I took the job the next week. Tuesday and Thursday mornings, I stood in a small classroom with 10 kids, some of them bright-eyed and curious, others skeptical and quiet, the way I used to be. I taught them how to build from scraps, how to debug in their heads, how to trust their hands as much as their books. And sometimes, when one of them stayed late or asked too many questions, I saw a flicker of myself. One night in January, I opened the glove compartment in my truck. Clara's letter was still there. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I stepped outside, walked to the fire barrel behind the shop, struck a match, and watched the paper curl into black ash. No anger, no triumph, just release. As the flame died, I closed my eyes and finally, exhaled. I wasn't Nathan the accused anymore. Wasn't the ghost in the van. I was just a man with grease on his hands and a business with his name on the door. And that was enough.